In the Bible, Job faced loss, suffering, and pain. But did you know he also encountered a mysterious and terrifying creature called Leviathan? This wasn't just a random appearance. This creature represents something much deeper, something that could change the way you see spiritual battles in your life. Today, you'll discover what Job's encounter with Leviathan really means, and the final revelation may surprise you. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless, upright, fearing God, and shunning evil. Job 1:1. Job wasn't just an ordinary man. He was known for his integrity and reverence for God. He lived in the land of Uz, a prosperous region in ancient times, and had an enviable life. His wealth was remarkable. Thousands of sheep, camels, oxen, and donkeys, along with numerous servants. He was one of the richest and most influential men in that region. However, what truly set Job apart wasn't his material wealth, but his upright and righteous character. He was respected for his honesty, devotion, and impeccable reputation. Job's greatness extended beyond wealth and social prestige. He was also a dedicated father who deeply cared about his children's spiritual well-being. Job regularly offered sacrifices on their behalf, fearing that they might have sinned against God in their hearts. Job 1:5. This detail reveals how much he valued his relationship with God and sought to keep his family under divine protection. He understood that prosperity alone wasn't enough without fear of God and righteousness. But Job's story took a dramatic turn when a conversation in heaven changed everything. In a surprising scene, Satan appears before God and makes an intriguing accusation. He questions Job's faithfulness, suggesting that Job was only righteous because of his comfortable, wealthy life. Satan challenges God. Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. Job 1:9-11. That's when Job's life began to crumble in a devastating way. In a short span of time, he lost everything. His possessions were plundered, his animals killed, and his children tragically taken by a sudden disaster. Imagine losing not just your wealth, but also your loved ones all in one day. Job's pain wasn't just material, it was emotional, spiritual, and physical. He was shattered, immersed in a grief few could bear. As if the personal tragedy wasn't enough, Job was struck with a severe illness that covered his body with painful sores. He found himself sitting in ashes, scraping his wounds with a piece of pottery. This striking image reflects the depth of his suffering, a pain that seemed unbearable. His body was wounded, but his mind and heart carried an even heavier burden. At this point, loneliness and despair became his closest companions. The friends who came to comfort him, instead of offering support, began to accuse him. They insisted that Job must be paying for some hidden sin, believing that such immense tragedy could only be a consequence of secret wrongdoing. These accusations not only intensified his pain, but also cast doubts on his own character. Job knew he had done nothing to deserve this, yet the sense of injustice began to consume his soul. Despite it all, Job stood firm. He didn't understand why he was suffering, but he held on to his unwavering faith. He questioned, lamented, and even expressed his anguish, but he never abandoned his trust in God. This resilience is what makes Job's story so powerful. He didn't pretend to be strong all the time, but he was honest about his pain while still holding on to his faith. This reveals an important lesson. Trusting God doesn't mean we won't feel pain, but that our hope remains alive even when everything seems lost. It was precisely at this moment, in the depths of Job's despair, that God began to speak. And it's in this divine speech that a mysterious and intriguing figure emerges: Leviathan. This creature wasn't mentioned by accident. It represents something far greater than just a fierce animal. There's a profound symbolism behind its presence. And this detail reveals one of the most powerful spiritual lessons we can draw from Job's story. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook or tie down its tongue with a rope? Job 41:1 2. Leviathan is one of the most mysterious and intriguing creatures mentioned in the Bible. When describing this being, God spares no words to emphasize its grandeur and destructive power. It's presented as a colossal, fierce, and nearly invincible creature. The description is so detailed that many scholars wonder if Leviathan was a literal animal, or if its mention carries a deeper symbolic meaning. The Bible describes Leviathan as a sea monster dwelling in the depths, one that no one can overpower. It has impenetrable scales, fearsome jaws, and a power that terrifies even the bravest warriors. God himself declares that no man is bold enough to confront it. No one is fierce enough to rouse it. Who then is able to stand against me? Job 41:10-11. This statement makes it clear that Leviathan is beyond human capability, representing something untamable and uncontrollable. This description may sound like a legend or mythological tale, but there's an essential detail. Leviathan is mentioned by God as part of his creation. It's not an independent force, but something that exists within God's sovereign plan. This reveals that no matter how fearsome this creature may seem, it is still subject to the Creator's power. This idea conveys a powerful message. Even the most terrifying forces are under God's authority. Leviathan is described as a creature that breathes fire, with flames bursting from its mouth and eyes that glow like the morning light. Flames stream from its mouth. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke pours from its nostrils as from a boiling pot over burning reeds. Job 41:19-20. This imagery reinforces the idea that Leviathan represents a force of overwhelming destruction. Yet what stands out most is that, despite its threatening nature, God describes Leviathan as part of his creation. This suggests that even what seems chaotic and uncontrollable is under God's dominion. Many scholars speculate that Leviathan symbolizes something far greater than just a sea monster. Some theories suggest that it represents evil forces, chaos, or even Satan himself. This idea is supported by passages such as Isaiah 27:1, which states, "In that day the Lord will punish Leviathan, the gliding serpent. He will slay the monster of the sea." This symbolic language points to Leviathan as an enemy of God's people, a force that opposes order and peace. The context in which Leviathan appears in Job's story makes this creature even more significant. Job was grappling with deep pain, feeling lost amid chaos and injustice. The introduction of Leviathan in God's conversation with Job was no coincidence. This creature represented exactly the kind of force Job felt was overwhelming his life, something bigger than him, impossible to control, and seemingly poised to destroy him. Leviathan symbolized what Job couldn't understand, a force that challenged his reason and tested his faith. By describing Leviathan as invincible, God was delivering a crucial message. There are things that human beings will never fully control or understand. Some struggles, pains, and challenges are beyond our ability to resolve or explain. Leviathan, then, represents the chaos that eludes human control, but not God's control. This creature, haunting the seas and spreading terror, was mentioned so that Job would grasp a vital truth. Even in the face of such a threatening force, God is sovereign. He reigns over everything, including Leviathan. This revelation not only expanded Job's understanding, but also unveiled a powerful spiritual lesson, one that directly connects to the battles we all face. What's truly behind this symbolism is even more surprising. In that day, the Lord will punish with his sword, his fierce, great and powerful sword, Leviathan, the gliding serpent. He will slay the monster of the sea. Isaiah 27:1. Although Leviathan is described as a monstrous and untamable creature, there's something much deeper behind this image. The symbolism of Leviathan reveals a powerful spiritual truth that goes far beyond a terrifying being. Leviathan is often associated with evil forces, chaos, and the spiritual currents that attempt to dominate creation. In biblical texts such as Isaiah 27:1, Leviathan is described as a twisting serpent and a dragon that dwells in the deep waters, an image clearly linked to the presence of evil working behind the scenes of humanity. The mention of Leviathan in Job's story was no coincidence. Within the context of Scripture, this creature symbolizes the power of destructive forces that, though invisible, are very real. It represents the spiritual enemy that, just as Satan acted in Job's life, seeks to cause chaos and destruction in the lives of those who follow God. This connection is reinforced by the way Leviathan is described: untamable, fierce, and impossible to be subdued by human hands. God presents Leviathan as a being that cannot be hooked, tamed, or controlled by any human strategy. This description carries a profound message. Some spiritual battles cannot be won with human strength or earthly wisdom. Just as Job couldn't prevent the losses and suffering he endured, we too face moments when chaos seems greater than our strength. The symbolic connection between Leviathan and Satan becomes even clearer when we examine other biblical texts. In Revelation 12:9, the devil is described as the great dragon, that ancient serpent called the devil, or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. This association is no coincidence. Just as Leviathan is portrayed as a creature that no one can control, Satan operates by attempting to dominate and influence people, sowing fear, confusion, and suffering. What makes Leviathan's symbolism even more fascinating is that, in the biblical narrative, this creature appears to have no weaknesses. In Job 41:33, God declares, "Nothing on earth is its equal, a creature without fear." This powerful statement highlights a profound spiritual truth. Just as Leviathan appears invincible, the spiritual enemy may seem unbeatable in human eyes. However, this sense of powerlessness does not mean we are defenseless. The key to understanding this symbolism lies in God's sovereignty. Leviathan may be a fearsome creature, but it is God who describes it and presents it as part of His creation. This reveals an essential truth. Even what appears to be out of control is, in reality, under divine rule. No matter how powerful Leviathan seems, it cannot act beyond the limits God has established. This understanding sheds new light on Job's suffering. When God mentioned Leviathan, He was reminding Job that there are forces that surpass human understanding and control, yet those same forces are still subject to God's authority. This lesson is powerful because it teaches us that even when we feel overwhelmed by chaos, we are not alone. There is a higher order that governs all things, and that order belongs to God. Leviathan's symbolism also reveals another important lesson. It represents the inner fears that try to paralyze us. Just as Job found himself surrounded by tragedies and afflictions that seemed endless, we too face moments when our problems feel greater than our strength. Leviathan symbolizes that overwhelming sense of being out of control, when circumstances spiral beyond our grasp and make us question even God's purpose. This raging and dominant creature points to something every human being faces, the feeling that there are battles too great to fight alone. And that's precisely the key message God wanted to convey to Job. He didn't need to face Leviathan alone. God not only knew this creature, but had total power over it. And it's this divine sovereignty that reveals an even more surprising truth. If this explanation is bringing you clarity, take a moment now to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more content like this. Oh, and don't forget to leave a like. It helps this message reach even more people. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Job 38:4. When God finally speaks to Job, He doesn't provide direct explanations for the suffering Job had endured. Instead, God asks a series of rhetorical questions, highlighting His greatness and power over all creation. Amid this response, the mention of Leviathan emerges a detail that at first glance seems unrelated to Job's suffering. But there's a profound meaning behind this choice. The first reason God mentioned Leviathan was to reveal human limitation. Throughout the narrative, Job tried to understand the reasons behind his pain and sought answers to explain his suffering. He believed that if he could comprehend what was happening, he would find peace. However, by introducing Leviathan, God was teaching Job something essential. There are things that surpass human ability to understand. Just as Job could never face or control Leviathan, he also couldn't fully grasp the mysteries behind God's actions. This was a challenging lesson for Job. During his suffering, he tried to rationalize his situation, listening to friends who insisted that his misfortune must be the result of some hidden sin. He searched for explanations for what he couldn't control. By mentioning Leviathan, God was showing him that some matters are beyond human logic, and trusting him requires accepting this reality. Another key point is that Leviathan symbolizes chaos. In Hebrew culture, the sea was often associated with danger and disorder, and Leviathan personified this destructive force. By bringing this figure into the conversation, God was highlighting that Job was facing something similar, an emotional and spiritual storm that seemed greater than he could handle. Yet God made it clear that even Leviathan, this terrifying creature, was under his control. This message carried powerful comfort. Job didn't need to fear the chaos that surrounded him because God was greater than it all. God didn't mention Leviathan just to impress Job with his strength and power, but to teach him that some battles are impossible to win with human effort alone. Leviathan was invincible to any man, but not to God. This truth carried an essential lesson for Job. Even when he couldn't see a way out of his pain, God had full control over every detail. The timing of God's mention of Leviathan is also significant. It happens after long chapters in which Job laments, questions, and seeks answers. He had reached his emotional and spiritual limit. Instead of providing direct explanations, God reveals a greater truth. Job didn't need to understand everything to trust. Just as no fisherman could control Leviathan, Job didn't need to grasp every detail of his suffering to know that God was in control. This lesson is especially relevant to our own lives. Many times, we face moments when everything seems to spiral out of control: financial crises, loss, emotional pain, or uncertainties that make us feel powerless before overwhelming problems. In those moments, our minds race with questions: why? Until when? What did I do to deserve this? However, just as Job had to learn, there are situations where God doesn't immediately reveal his reasons. Instead, he reminds us that his sovereignty is greater than any chaos. This truth also highlights a powerful spiritual reality. Trusting God doesn't mean having all the answers, but believing that he is in control, even when circumstances seem insurmountable. Leviathan symbolized the kind of challenge that appears impossible to overcome, a reminder that there are forces greater than us, but none greater than God. This revelation was essential for Job to understand something even deeper. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Romans 8:28. After all the pain, questions, and intense experiences Job faced, the symbolic confrontation with Leviathan revealed a powerful secret, a truth that not only addressed Job's doubts, but also teaches a valuable lesson for all of us. This lesson is so profound that it continues to resonate even today. The secret lies in God's sovereignty amid chaos. When God mentioned Leviathan, he wasn't just describing an untamable creature. He was revealing a metaphor about the challenges that seem impossible to overcome. Leviathan symbolizes not only the forces of evil and chaos, but also those circumstances that completely escape our control. By describing this powerful and uncontrollable creature, God was revealing that even when everything seems lost, he remains in charge. This truth is incredibly impactful because it challenges our natural tendency to seek control and understanding. Job spent much of his suffering trying to find a logical explanation for his losses and pain. He desperately wanted to understand why his life had turned upside down. But God didn't give him a direct answer. Instead, he revealed that some things can only be understood by trusting in his power and wisdom. The deep secret revealed in Job's story is this: although there are spiritual forces, unexpected circumstances, and painful experiences that are beyond our control, nothing is beyond God's control. Leviathan, no matter how terrifying, existed within the boundaries God had established. This revelation carried a powerful message for Job. He didn't need to defeat Leviathan on his own, because God was already above him. This truth connects directly to one of the most powerful promises in Scripture, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Romans 8:28. Even the most painful situations, even when it feels like there's no way out, God is invisibly working to transform evil into good. Job's life is clear proof of this. His losses were immense, but in the end, he not only experienced restoration, but also gained a deeper understanding of who God truly is. This revelation teaches us that trusting God doesn't mean everything will go as planned, but rather that even in the midst of chaos, he is working for our good. This is a lesson that directly applies to our everyday lives. When we face unexpected losses, family crises, or moments of profound despair, we can remember that, like Job, we don't need to understand everything to trust that God is in control. Additionally, Leviathan symbolizes those inner battles that seem impossible to overcome: anxiety, fear, insecurity, and even temptations that relentlessly attack us. Just as Job couldn't fight Leviathan on his own, we also cannot face these struggles relying solely on our own strength. The key lies in surrendering control to the one who is greater than all these forces. This truth is transformative because it reveals that peace doesn't come from the absence of problems, but from the assurance that no matter how fierce Leviathan may be, God remains in control. This understanding gave Job a new perspective. He realized that he didn't need to have answers for every pain, but rather trust that the Creator was above all things. The greatest secret revealed is this: even when we are surrounded by pain and uncertainty, there is a sovereign God who controls even what seems indomitable. And that trust is what empowers us to move forward, even when we can't see the way out. There's still one more important lesson that this story teaches us, a practical application that can transform the way you face life's difficulties. Just like Job, we all face moments of pain, doubt, and fear. But remember, the same God who conquered Leviathan is also watching over you. If this video helped you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any new content. And don't forget to leave a like, it helps this message reach more people. Now tell me in the comments, had you ever heard about the meaning of Leviathan before? What did this story teach you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't leave the channel just yet. There's a video right here that I highly recommend for you to continue learning more about God's Word. God bless you.